Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of CrowCast Tuesday Night Live, of course, brought to you by Smith Partners Real Estate, Down to Earth Electrical, Hardware Unbox, and all our fantastic patrons on Patreon. It's good to be back after a little break. I went on a bit of a mine training camp up in, Central Highlands in Queensland, and I'm all refreshed and ready to go. It didn't break me, and hopefully it didn't break my cohorts on here tonight. Welcome, Peter. How you going?
I'm good, mate. I'm very happy that you got away for a week in Queensland and weren't affected by it. That's fantastic. So good to have you back.
Yeah, well, not. There's a small twitch going on, but I'm just putting that down. Nikki, how are you?
I'm going very well.
Good to hear, and thanks for the precast, whatever that was. And Macca, how you doing, mate?
Helping expand. I was just helping expand your knowledge.
Yeah, I did. I came in on the tail end of that, and I'm sorry I did. No, evening all.
Do you feel expanded, Macca?
Well, I have expanded a bit over the years, but not by that.
Well, it is great to be back, and apologies for forgetting that I wasn't going to be here last week. That was a bit of an oversight, but never mind. We got there in the end. How about we crack straight into some news, shall we? Just a bit going on, ladies and gentlemen.
A little bit going on.
I was going to say, do we want to get just the AFLW stuff out of the way first before we then get into all the AFL?
No, who gives us stuff about AFLW?
No, we do the important stuff.
Me.
Wasn't there? I didn't realise there was AFLW stuff going on at the moment. But
there is at the moment.
Oh, Peter, you opened the door.
Why did you do that? Why did you do that?
Bad line.
Just talk over it.
It means it basically means we get to throw a brickbat at the AFL once again and the AFLPA. There's a vote on the new CBA for the AFLW players. They have to get 75% of the vote to agree on it. They only got 70% on the weekend. There's a core group of AFLW players that actually got some lawyers involved because they don't think the AFLPA has been listening to them as proper paid-up members of the AFLPA, which I think is probably spot on. The main sticking point is actually regarding the season length. Now, we have a problem in the AFL with an unequal draw. The AFL has, an unequal draw, has a chance with the AFLW to actually create an equal draw and have every team play each other once. They got slammed for the conference system, have said they're not going to do it again because it really didn't work. That was their way around it, and they were testing it out to try and bring it in to the AFL. And they're kind of sticking their heels in about it. So, yeah, they've just been a bit stupid, and I think there's major problems with the AFLPA and the AFL kind of in little cahoots and not doing what is best for the new competition.
There's a lot more brewing than that, though, Nikki.
There is a bit more than that, but that's one of the main sticking points, and it's one of the most easily fixed, and it's the one that pretty much every fan has said you can do it, and the majority of players are actually agreeable to starting the season earlier so that it doesn't go into the men's season. They're willing to actually start earlier, but the AFL's kind of sticking to their guns of stupidity, basically.
Where it's going to run into trouble, Nikki, in the long run is the fact that they eventually will want more money when they're actually raising no money, and having longer seasons costing more. So that's where the sticky issues are going to start to develop.
But I think they're actually happy with the money aspect of it because...
No, that's not right.
Pretty good. I haven't heard other stuff. Mostly it's to do with what I've heard. It's mostly to do around the season length and the fairness of the season.
Well, most of the spokespeople for AFLW are saying what you're saying, but there's some agitators in the background bringing in the sexual situation, equality for all sexes, etc. We want to be paid the same as the men, etc. And that's not just going to happen.
What I understand the new CBA actually does in terms of with the hours that they put in, that it's closer to that. So I'm not sure who's pushing that, but that's not something I've heard.
Yeah, I was reading up about it, and it's far too ambitious, far too early. But nothing wrong with having everybody play each other once.
Which the AFL's refusing to do because they're stupid.
Right, you've had your turn on the AFLW, that's done.
Rightio, now that my news segment's been hijacked,
Hey, it was my news segment before it was your news segment, Pete.
that was last season, I reckon. But anyway, there was just a couple of minor happenings that have just popped up on social media. So it looks like the Tim Kellee trade is very, very close to going through. That's sparking a lot of chatter at the moment. And it appears that West Coast are offering up their pick 14, their 2020 first, and also I think it's pick 24 as well. So quite a haul there for the Cats. But as I just said a little while ago, it is, for me, when you've got a player like Tim Kellee, then you pay what it costs and you just get him on your list. Because if he was coming to Adelaide, guys, I just you just sell the farm, don't you?
Especially in their current position. I mean, what's more use to them? Getting their midfield a little bit stronger to combat GWS and Richmond and put a bit of a gap between themselves and Geelong, or getting a couple of kids that are speculative.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's just
absolutely.
It just reflects where they are in their cycle.
And it was ridiculous, the posturing you heard from Geelong at the start, and the Victorian media of how dare he pick which club to go to. It's like, pot, kettle, black, you lot.
Oh, I mean, it's not unusual for that to be the case.
No, unfortunately.
We should be used to that by now.
So that looks like that's one of the major trade deals of this off season. So that looks like that's going to whiz through as you'd expect. I think we all expected that they would get there eventually. So that's quite a significant achievement, I think, for West Coast. Plenty of other trade scuttlebutt about, and that has been going on for the last sort of couple of weeks since we were last on air. So probably one of the major ones is the Joe Daniher to Sydney that is attempting to be pushed through at the moment. So that's one of the other major ones that's hanging out there at the moment. Any thoughts on that one, guys?
Yep, that's the joke of the whole trade season, in my opinion. The Victorian media hopping aboard and saying that he's a 2 first-round draft pick every day of the week. You don't get guys like him growing on trees. Picks 5 and 8 or 6 and 9.
Played for 2 years.
Well, I'll give you the facts. He did 2 years ago, he played 7 games. Last year, he played 4 games. In total, he's played 11 games and kicked 12 goals, 14 in that time. And they want 2 first-round draft picks. And the Victoria media say they have to pay it.
Geez, what would you pay for Jeremy Cameron then? About 4 first-round draft picks and your firstborn child?
and second.
To me, it is the joke of the whole draft season, and the way the media is behind it. If somebody leaves Victoria, they're worth 1,000 times more than any player coming to Victoria. It's just a joke.
If he didn't have the surname of Danaher, I don't think he'd be rated as highly as he is, because whilst he's actually a really nice field kick, he's atrocious in front of goal. He's on par with actually Josh Bruce. So, and he's also as, actually I think Josh Bruce has managed to get on the field more than Danaher has, but he's still fairly injury prone. So I actually think both of those should be, whatever they're saying Josh Bruce needs to be traded for, I think that's on par with what Danaher should be worth, but they are dealing with Essendon.
You wouldn't want to be a player trying to get out of Essendon, would you? Because there's a fair chance that trade doesn't get done, I reckon.
Yeah.
There's a really good chance that it doesn't get done. And then Joey Danaher's stuck at Essendon for another year or however long he's got left to go, and we go through this whole drama again. And Dodora's notorious for this bullshit, and he's doing the same with Fantasia as well.
Fantasia as well. Yeah, he was going to be my next one.
You know, I mean, it doesn't build a lot of faith, does it, within the club when they see players treated like that? And look, I know that clubs don't have a lot of power in trade week, and players have a lot of power and all the rest of it. But you've got to be realistic, surely. I mean, if the guy wants to go, you get it done, or you make him happy one way or the other. You don't just set exorbitant prices and just let it hang out to dry like that.
Well, James, the name Josh Bruce got mentioned, I'll just tie him in with Alex Keith, because the Victorian media are saying that Josh Bruce, because what the Bulldogs have is, I think it's pick 13, pick 32, and then out to 46 or something like that. I'm not sure. Might be even further out. And they're saying that, they shouldn't part with pick 13 for any of those two, but maybe for Bruce, but no, not quite. But pick 32 for Bruce, and then something later from that for Keith. And, you know, for God's sake, Keith was in running for All-Australian contention before he got injured.
Hey, Pete, shall we talk about the Josh Bruce trade?
I know. I just want to talk about the unfairness of what the Victorian media put on the relative value.
Yeah, but you know what? Who gives a shit about the Victorian media? To be honest, and I'm not sorry. I agree.
I hate them.
I agree with you, obviously, but they don't. At the end of the day, it's meaningless what they think. Barrett reckons that Brad Crouch is worth 15. You know, I mean, I had the great misfortune during my drive back from Queensland to listen to a fair bit of trade radio.
Oh, God.
And I think I know which moment you're going to talk about.
No, the whole bloody lot. The whole lot. I mean, you know, at one stage, Kane Corns was going on saying that Adelaide Crows don't have a bloody small forward. We've got half a fucking squad of small forwards, for God's sakes.
He reckons we should them all. We don't have them.
We don't have them, but here are the ones we do have that are no good. Yeah. Apparently. So
you just cannot get taken in by it, because it's all driven, you know, by their analytics and their, you know, and where they want to get bumps in, you know, social media coverage and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the reality is that there was a survey done last year, and the Adelaide Football Club have more Twitter users than any other AFL club. So if you want to get some bumps in Twitter, then go out and say that Brad Crouch is worth, you know, pick 15.
Yeah.
Just put it out there, you know, and then of course it just melts down. And
or do what Tom Brown did,
and so did Kane Corns.
Yeah, do what Tom Brown did. Scott Burns is balls deep in the Adelaide coaching job. Oh no, Scott Burns is out. Adam Uze's in. No, Adam Uze's out. Oh, actually, Scott Burns and Adam Uze are both still in. That's his whole week's reporting on the Adelaide Crows coaching position. It's one day they're in, one day they're out, one day they're in.
No, he's just throwing a dart at a dartboard.
Of course he is. Yep. I mean, it's just like Pete said, it's just clickbait. It's all it is.
And then they see themselves trend.
Yeah, exactly right.
Many people that are there's so many people that are following Adelaide stuff, and they see themselves trend.
Yeah. I must admit, having been on Twitter quite a bit lately, it's dominated by Adelaide, Pete.
Oh, I mean, in fairness, there's a fair amount going on, but anyway, let's. I mean, go on, Pete.
Do you want to do non-Crow stuff for a bit, or?
Yep.
And then we'll get, because there's a lot of Crow stuff.
Yeah, let's do the non-Crow stuff.
Just a little bit on that Danaher one. So what's kind of been talked about now is if he goes, Essendon's now apparently expressed an interest in Mason Cox. But for me, that kind of begs the question of, well, what about Josh Jenkins? He's not been mentioned at all. He's very much doesn't seem to be in the frame for any club.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the Mason Cox one is a bit of a beat up as well, to be perfectly honest with you. Cox is if he does get turfed out of Collingwood, it'll be nothing to do with the fact of his ability or whether he's wanted in that sense or not. But apparently,
Collingwood are running into real strife as far as their 2020 budget is concerned. Or certainly at the end of it, for certain, and they're going to have real problems.
But Cox isn't going to solve that, surely.
No, but they probably have to unload more than one. But he's one of the ones they're talking about. I suppose they're looking at who is the most important to get rid of. The least important. The easiest to get rid of, not the most important. The easiest to get rid of because they have the least effect on what you do.
Yeah, but there's no point getting rid of someone who's easy if he's not going to make a dent in your TPP, if that's what the problem is.
Well, but he may be getting a lot more than we think. That's what I'm getting at. So,
didn't he come in as a Category B rookie or something?
Yeah, he's a Category B rookie.
Yeah,
so
he's
not on a lot.
He'd be on the same as what Greenwood and Keithy would have been on when they kicked off. A couple of hundred G, probably.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but he's been there a little while. He may be getting more than that. But that's apparently what I was reading that was the reason that they're trying to move him on. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't think he adds a lot of value to the Collingwood. He had that one good final where he, sort of had his little breakout game and all the rest of it. But if you're talking about a consistent forward who can ruck, which is what they need, Collingwood, then he's not it, is he?
No, he's not. But Jenkins will get a home somewhere. But
we're not talking about Adelaide yet. You got to stick to the script, Macca.
No, Nicky raised him. That was all.
God, it's hard, Pete, isn't it?
Oh my God!
You give them a week off and they just lose their shit.
It just goes everywhere.
No, it's just like a normal Sunday night. Come on, Fiend. You should be used to this by now.
At least I'm talking about the bloody men, not the women.
Oh, Jesus!
Oh, there we go.
You might have to get sin bin for that. Anyway,
Mrs. Macca, deal with him.
Adam Tomlinson exercised his free agent rights and he moved from GWS to Melbourne. That will open up some potential trade in relation to Sam Jacobs. We'll talk about that one a bit later.
Yeah, interesting pick by Melbourne. I don't know. I'm not sure whether he fits a need, really, Tomlinson.
No, to me, he's a very same with a lot of midfielders they've already got, which is why GWS were having to play him in the back lines.
But he's not a midfielder.
Well, he's a wingman. He can play on the wing.
Yeah.
I wonder whether they're thinking of playing him up forward because they seem to, they have a reasonable defence, but they've got not much of an attack.
Yeah,
and he's one of those types that you use to plug holes rather than really dominate a position.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. Interesting one, but I mean, Melbourne are not known for their logical thinking.
No, that's true.
So some of the trades still waiting. Brad Hill has informed Freo he'll be leaving. Paddy Ryder will be nominating St Kilda to get a trade over there. So there's still plenty of player movement too, and I'm sure that I've got no doubt at all that I've missed some. There'll be some others. I think Jack Stephen is heading down to Geelong. They're talking about. So there's a few others there. So there's lots of movement. Fremantle Football Club appointed Justin Longmuir as their coach. He was spoken about very, very briefly in relation to the Crows job, but I think that it was fairly common knowledge that he was in the Fremantle job up to his armpits, and so he was not surprisingly appointed to Freo. Little side note there, did anyone catch the little press release that Peter Sumich put out when he was in that position?
No.
How to kill your future chances.
Did he have a dummy's fit?
Excuse me.
Big dummy's fit.
I think it was someone had obviously helped him word it. It was a fairly polite. It was a dummy speak, but it was polite, and he did remember to congratulate Justin Longmuir
at the end.
But he had a couple of paragraphs on why he should have got the job, and the fact that he had a lot of support from Fremantle, from the supporters, and it was a little bit awkward, to be honest, as my 13-year-old teenage girl would say. It was awkward. It really was. It was just all a bit awkward.
Guaranteed to never give him a job again.
No, so that was...
Not a Freo.
that was an interesting one. The other thing that has happened in the last 2 weeks that had was massive news and it's had a huge impact on us was the Gold Coast rescue package that has been provided by the AFL. I'm not sure if you caught that while you're up there in sunny Queensland. They would have been very, very happy about that.
Yeah, there were lots of parties going on amongst the throngs of Gold Coast supporters.
All four of them.
Amongst the throngs of Gold Coast supporters.
Oh, g'day, Donkey.
Oh, hi.
I didn't see you slip in there, mate.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
We got a full deck.
It was daylight savings, so we were caught out. I was sort of just mulling around cleaning the house, but then I was like, oh, actually, I know what's going on now. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, the other one, that just before you move on to the Gold Coast one, the other one of note is, or there's a couple from Port, Peter. One is Dougal Howard that appears set for North Melbourne. And Billy Frampton, who we'll talk about, I guess, a little bit further.
Sam Gray's out in the he's not being offered another deal or one that he's not accepting anyway, and there's a bit of interest in him, I think, from over the border. Yeah,
I think from clubs like the Western Bulldogs and maybe even North might be into him as well.
But Sam Gray's the type of player that would be wanting to play a lot forward. You know, he'd be about pick 50 or something.
I don't reckon he's that bad. I reckon he'd slot quite nicely into a lower ranked Victorian team, to be honest. We've also got Jamie Elliott re-signing with the Pies. We got Tom Papley still to get over the line. He's looking to go to the highest bidder. He doesn't care as long as it's somewhere in Victoria. So.
Nominated Carlton.
Jack Martin from Gold Coast. He's trying to get to Carlton too, I think. So.
Yep.
So, Anyway, Gold Coast. Sorry, Pete, just to round that out. Gold Coast. Do we like it?
It's outrageous.
No.
Well, you know, it's ridiculous. You can't get people to do certain actions under certain rules, and then once that's happened, then change the rules so that they don't get what they traded for in the first place. Just can't do it.
The real problem with Gold Coast is the lack of
wins,
senior players, mature players to help those youngsters. Giving them top-end draft picks so they can once again draft teenagers, of course going to be from Victoria because that's where the bulk of the top draftees come from, who are going to head home. The first sign of interest from Victorian clubs that have a lot more money to throw at them. It's just going to keep that little cycle going of what the problem is at Gold Coast. They needed mature.
Here's the hypocrisy of the system, because all of the AFL clubs voted in favour of or were convinced by McLaughlin to give Gold Coast this package. And yet all of the AFL clubs, particularly those in Victoria, are going to be absolutely in the years of those two young Victorian lads that head up at Gold Coast from the moment they arrive.
Absolutely.
And it's going to completely undermine the whole package. So I don't quite understand what the point is. And I'm with you, Nick. They needed mature players, and I think it would have been far better served for them to be given priority picks or concessional picks that they had to on trade for players rather than be allowed to take that to the draft. But it seems to me the AFL have just basically said, all right, boys, here's a couple more picks. Here's a package for the next 3 years. Start again, see what you can do this time.
Well, you know, St Kilda made no bones yesterday about the fact that they'll be having a crack at Ben King. Yep. They thought it would be very, very romantic to have Ben and Max in the same side. Well, why don't they offer up Max so he can play up with Ben up the Gold Coast if it's so romantic?
Well, Justin Reid was quoted as saying that, now I can't remember the exact words he used, but he made it fairly clear that we'd be targeting Lukosius for next year.
At the end of next year, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, I agree with both Nicky and Fane that it's a short-sighted Band-Aid solution. You know, really what I didn't mind so much that they gave them an extra recruiting zone. I didn't think they did as well as what GWS did with their recruiting zones.
That's true.
You know, GWS had Riverina, which was
correct.
You know, obviously a much better recruiting zone, and so I think that giving them an additional recruiting zone was probably a positive thing. That's the kind of thing, It's the old, give a man fish and it will last him for a day. Teach him how to fish and it will last him a while. You've got to give some longer-term solutions.
Yes.
So recruiting zone, I think they could have been better. I'm not sure what their salary cap concessions are like, but that would have been something that might have been a bit more helpful as well. But just to throw cheap, early draft picks at them, it just compounds the problem, as you both mentioned.
And it further undermines the competition. Because again, they're sucking talent out of the system, and why isn't our esteemed chairman, Mr. Chapman, smashing down the door of the AFL because the pick that we traded for in good faith last year has been devalued as a consequence of this concession situation, and where's our compensation for dropping down the list?
Very good. Excellent point.
Spot on.
But Mr. Chapman's too busy making sure that he's got a chair in 2020 to worry about silly little things like football-related matters. And, of course, our general manager, football operations, is too busy hiding in the corner from all the media at the moment to worry about that sort of shit. Probably hiding from Jason Dunstall as well, because Dunstall will probably give him an uppercut. But we'll talk about that a little bit more a little later, I'm sure. Peter, do we want to get on to the Crows stuff?
I think we could probably get on to the Crows stuff. So I think in terms of actually things that have actually happened, probably the most definitive of those at the moment is Camillus Yeoman, who has exercised his rights as a free agent and has been signed by the Brisbane Lions.
And given us a clip on the way out.
And given us a nice clip on the way out as well. And pick 47 coming back our way, which I actually thought was not a bad result.
Well, I think it's as good as we could have hoped for. Definitely.
Yeah, I think, given what you and I both were fans, no doubt about that. But if you look at it, that's actually pretty good.
Well, I think, like Macca said, it's probably the best we could have hoped for, probably more than we could have hoped for, to be honest. And all the best to CY. He's been around the fringes. Nobes obviously knows him up there. And all of a sudden Brisbane will be running around with half of Adelaide's second-rate midfield in Jared Lyons and Camillus Yeoman, and contending for a flag next year.
I was actually happy for him because I think we've exploited him for the last couple of years. He's been on rookie money for the last couple of years, and yet when he played his first 10 games of 2019, he was very much high in our best players, and he's been with the club 7 years or something like that.
And three knee reconstructions during that time.
I understand that, Nicky, but I still think we exploited him to some degree, and good luck to him, and I hope he has a good career up there.
I thought he had a very good first part of the season this year. I thought he was very, very important for us, and it was interesting that his injury came at the bye, and we sort of fell apart after that. I'm sure it wasn't just because Cam wasn't there.
That's what I kept saying every week, Pete.
It was an interesting thing, wasn't it?
It was. It went from shin splints to leprosy in the space of 6 weeks.
But you're right, Fed. He gave us a fair old clip on the way out, and he talked about the camp. And for anybody that any doubters, not climate deniers, but if you're a camp denier out there and you don't want to listen to the science, then it's there in black and white. So Cam has given us a good clip about the camp on the way out, and he said it was divisive. And it was a contributing factor to us not being able to reach the levels that we did in 2017. So if you're still a camp denier, then Cam should have wrapped that up for you.
Yep.
So the other one, Sam Jacobs has formally requested a trade to GWS. So we wait on that one because of the Tomlinson compo. So they've elected to take that compensation. So I expect we'll get something pretty ordinary, some change back for Source. So good luck to him after his service.
I think from what Reid was saying that it's likely to go to a trade now because GWS were in conversation with the AFL regarding if they signed Sam as a free agent, what then would happen to their Tomlinson compensation, as you just said. Mm-hmm. So I think there'll be a later exchange of a draft pick for Sam to us.
Well, so it'll
become a trade.
it suggests at very best a third round draft pick, doesn't it?
I would be surprised if it was a third round.
No,
I
at
think
very
it's
best.
fourth.
Yeah.
What do you think we would get for the AFL though if we just did the free agent thing?
I think it'll be closer to a fourth round because he wouldn't be on a lot of. It'll be on it's a 2-year contract with GWS, I think it is.
Yeah, but it would be like 250
But I'm not
grand or
sure.
something.
Yeah, it's not a lot, but I think there's.
I reckon he'd be getting more than that.
Isn't there? No, I think there's a transition to a coaching role. So
Okay.
that then becomes a bit iffy, I think, in there, whether that's included under the. It's not included under the player payments. Therefore, he doesn't kind of hit the threshold of what he's going to be paid. But he would have been one of our close to one of our top earners, I would have thought.
Yeah, the point I was really getting at is that I don't know why we helped GWS if we could get better at just taking the free agency thing.
I don't think we have any
they have to
leverage
lodge
in that.
the paperwork.
Yeah.
So we're relying on them lodging the paperwork. We can't force them to lodge paperwork that's going to put them in a poor position. They're not going to do it.
No, fair enough.
So that leaves us with we've got a couple of likely salary dumps in Josh Jenkins and Eddie Betts
And Hughie Greenwood.
So both. Well, I was gonna put Hughie
All right, sorry.
with Keith, Alex Keith as being the ones that could actually net us something. So the salary dumps, we've got Josh and Eddie. So Eddie, I think I would say that they're just waiting on those for Carlton to do something, or I imagine there's some haggling on which part of the salary we're going to keep. So, but I would imagine I'd be very, very surprised if you weren't still paying those players in 2020, even though they'll be at different clubs. No idea where Josh is going at this stage.
I still think Jenkins will end up at Essendon. And there's a little bit of backlash at Carlton about Eddie. Everyone likes it from a romantic idea, but everyone's on the youthful list train at Carlton, and Eddie doesn't fit that mould at all. And you know, if they end up getting Papley in, what the hell do they need Eddie Betts for?
Oh, and Jack Martin as well. He's wanting to get to Carlton. Not exactly like for like, but still a smallish, I guess forward type player. So yeah, you're right. He may well not get there.
Well, I was just about to say, I'm not sure whether that's entirely a done deal yet.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I was watching a video before I came online here, and which was supposed to be the very, very latest. It was saying that Jack Martin, who they want from the Gold Coast, Carlton, and he's nominated them as his club of choice. He's one that's pushing that he would like to have Eddie there as his mentor as well, and that because of that, it will almost probably make it as a done deal that Eddie will get done, but he won't. In fact, I think it's been agreed that he will get done, but it won't happen till after Jack Martin is signed up.
Next on the list is just a rumoured. There's been a rumour of Riley Knight doing a medical at Sydney, and that the Swannies have some interest in trading for Riley Knight. I can't imagine we'll get a lot for him. Probably at best maybe a third.
If we got a third, we'd be happy with that.
And honestly, as much as I've loved Riley, with the way that he's kind of gone about it, the one thing we've been quite critical about is that he needs to average more than his 20 possessions, which I don't think he's even been averaging that.
No.
Again,
18.
Yeah, he needs to get closer to that 20 or above. Whilst he's really tenacious, we've seen that he works brilliantly as a tagger, but we seem reluctant to use him as such in that role. He's lost in that forward. He goes missing for a lot of the game. He'll bob up and do something nice, and he's got some really neat skills, great kick for goal, really good engine, so he's, quite adept at still being able to do those good skills into the last quarter, but he just doesn't do it enough in a game.
Yeah, I think that Riley's one of those peripheral players that has suffered a little bit from our a very, very static selection lineup, and has found it very, very difficult to get anything other than bit parts. He's behind a lot of very, very sort of old and favoured players that we've seen over the last few years. And I have a funny feeling that Sydney might turn him into something that's just halfway reasonable, a best 22 player in any event. So that's Riley Knight, and then the last two, I think I've covered them all. The last two I've left it last because I think these are our money trades. So this is where we could actually do okay, and that's of course our Cat B rookies, Hughie Greenwood and Alex Keith. So I think that they're ones that we can actually have a bit of a discussion about as to getting a little bit of currency.
All right, which one do you want to talk about first then, Pete?
Let's talk about Keith.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, the problem with Keith is, or maybe to our advantage, they're after the Chapman St Kilda, and also they're after Keith. And one they play opposite ends of the ground, and they are key position players, which the Bulldogs are very light on. So I think they really would like to have both of them. And when it comes to draft picks, they've got draft pick 13, and then they go to 30-something after that, 32 I think it is, and then they go out to about 53 after that. And of course the old Melbourne media, they're saying, well, 32 for Bruce is about right, and then 53 for Keith. But, Alex Keith is, that's what I was saying earlier when I was out of line their feet and jumped in too early, that, he was playing... before he got injured, he was playing double A form, and he would have made the All-Australian form if he could maintain that for the rest of the year. Yeah. And the guy is a good footballer. He's an excellent footballer, and he's not a pick 53. And even 32, I think, is a little bit too high for him. So my suggestion would be is that, and I'm sure that they are trying to do it, is to try and angle to get pick 13 out of the Bulldogs and give them back something in the 20s, like our highest 20, so they can palm that off onto St Kilda and get Bruce that way, and then they're left with their own second rounder. So, something along those lines.
Yeah, Macca, I think that's I think that'd be a good outcome for us, and I actually think it stacks up pretty well on paper. And I've seen a couple of even Melbourne journos put that across Twitter over the last week or so. So, apart from the last 24 hours of Western Bulldogs looking about how bad his ankle injury was, I think that's probably something will happen.
Fane, what's your thoughts on Keithy?
I'd like to pass because I'm doing other things.
I know you caught him out there.
No, I was just going to say that's the logical sense in that those two trades are kind of tied in together, in that Saints want something in probably in the 20s for Bruce, and the Bulldogs just don't have it, which means the Saints have got a bit of power, and we've got a bit of power as well because we've got picks in the 20s. And yes, to say, okay, we can give it to you, but we've got to get something quality back. And I thought Reed's comments today was very interesting, where he actually said that he knows what the contract is that has been put in front of Keith, which is a 3-year contract with very easy triggers for a 4th year. So he knows exactly what's being offered from the Bulldogs, what they value him at, which is a 4-year contract. And if you want to put a 4-year contract in front of a player that hasn't played 50 games, you value him highly, therefore you will pay for him if you want him. So I think we do have some power there, and I did like what Reed said and the way he smacked down the whole thing that's been pushed regarding the surgery, etc., with Keith.
And I think really if you're going to have any knackers at all and try and shut the Bulldogs up with all that crap, you would have to be prepared to say to them, if you don't give us what is a fair and reasonable trade, and instead of trying to get it for nothing, then we'll just keep the guy and we'll just give him the contract. You have to be prepared to say that.
Well, he has to accept a new contract with us. He could go to the draft. And then it's like, well,
and end up at the Gold Coast.
Bulldogs. Yeah. You know, no matter what price he puts on his head, there's going to be a number of other clubs that are going to jump at Alex Keefe.
Yeah. I also think that it's just no one's going to make any moves this early in the trade week. Like, just nothing's moving. So, you know, it's probably a fair and reasonable thing. And I think everyone's probably sitting there going, yeah, that's what's going to happen. Because if you're the Bulldogs and you're looking at your strategy, you know, you've got a lot of young kids that are now starting to, you know, and you've got a premiership early, but those guys are starting to now actually hit the proper window. And you're going to bring in a couple of key players in key positions that you actually need to, you know, retake your side back up to that next level. Are you really going to stuff around and, you know, screw around for pick 13 when that could mean bring in both Bruce and Keith? Nah, you're just going to get it done and move on.
Yeah. Same as West Coast, you are just going to get it done. The other one, Hughie Greenwood, I kind of like the thought of packaging up Hugh with something else to get down to that pick 15.
Same as me.
The Gold Coast have got. We'll need to send something with that, whether that happens to be that Carlton second rounder that we've got, or whether that's too much. But somewhere around that and Hughie should, I think, get us around to about that pick 15.
Yep, agreed. Absolutely agree.
Yeah, because I think I saw Fiend had actually put on Big Footy that whilst there's those two outstandings at 1 and 2, from about pick 3 to pick 20, they all seem to be on par in terms of draft ability. So it's very much, if you've got a particular need, you're going to you should find a good player in that range, regardless of whether you've got a pick at 15 or whether you've got to pick at 7.
Well, Nicky, just following on. Sorry, go on, Fane.
No, I was just about to say that, you know, that's what all the draft analysis is saying, that really 3 to 30 is a lottery and it's very much a pick for needs draft this year rather than a take the best available talent. So I think we're going to see some interesting picks of players that may go higher or lower simply for that reason.
It leads to my final bit of trade collateral, I suppose, if you want to put it that way. I thought it was worth just having a really quick chat about pick 4 as well. And Nicky just raising that point just leads into that as to whether you think there is any value. And Fiend, you might have looked at the draft a bit more close than I have. But do you think that there's any mind of the Crows to look at trading that pick 4 for and splitting, getting a couple of other higher picks?
Well, personally, I think that there is. I haven't had a look individually at what's available yet, but I think of this type of draft, it's worth looking at. You'd think that Hamish and Reid would be across what other clubs are looking for, and you'd think other clubs are the same. So they'd have half an idea of what might be available at certain stages in the draft. And if they feel like what we need, I mean, I think there's a young lad who's shaping up to be a fairly decent key position defender. I reckon he's South Australian too, but I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
No.
Sorry?
Gould.
Yeah, and you would imagine that he might be on our radar, given our current stocks in that position with Daniel getting a bit older and Hardigan sort of in and out of form a bit, and all we've got really is Geordie Butts. So that, you know, I think it is that type of draft this year where as long as they play their cards right, splitting 1 into 2, as long as, you know, that 2 is still at a reasonable level, mightn't be a bad option.
Justin Reid has actually said that thing, that he's open to the right offer for pick 4. As long as to split it, as long as it's the right offer. Generally, when you split a high one like that, you about a 20 to a 30% loading on it. So if you look at the draft value index that the AFL use, so pick 4 is worth about 2,000 points. So you'd be looking at perhaps getting something like about maybe a pick 10 and a pick 14 or something like that for a pick 4.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I think is where they've said that Gould will kind of fall into the teens.
Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. I mean, you'd probably like to stay in single figures, but it's probably unlikely to be able to manufacture that. But certainly 10 and 14 I could certainly live with in this particular draft.
And the fact that it's a draft for needs kind of draft, and it's the perfect time for us because that's what we really need to look at, is that giving that opportunity to Hamish and his team to really set this new team up for the future. He did really well last year. I can't find a fault really with any that he picked up last year.
I think the jury's out still.
Well, I like them all.
Yeah, I think Chase Jones was a bit of a reach in my opinion. I like what Chase brings, and I read an interesting stat about Chase in terms of he was like third out of all the Rising Star noms or first year players or whatever. He was third for average contested possessions in the midfield, and 58th for time on ground percentage. So
wow.
he certainly brings something. I'm yet to be sold that he was worth the pick that we took him. But we obviously haven't seen enough of him yet.
I'm in the same camp as you've been.
Yeah. McHenry's another one. We took him. What did we take McHenry with? We took him with a pick that I would have liked to see used on someone else. Yep. And, he's disappointed, in my opinion, Ned. But whether that is because of selection policy, injury management,
had injury.
I know he had an injury, but how that was managed, under our regime, who knows? But he would want to get himself in calculations pretty quickly next year, I would imagine.
Yeah, and he's definitely got the personality to do that. All I'll say is the reasoning that was given for the injury that he had was not to us as a footballing public was not the injury he actually had that kept him out. There was another one that they didn't talk about.
So was this the car accident?
Yeah, so he had some back issues and then a concussion.
Yeah.
But what they didn't talk about was the fact that he had a foot issue. That's what kept him out. And that's straight from his mouth as I was sitting behind him having a chat with Riley O'Brien at the Centrals game.
Look, I'm in your boat, Nikki. I ended up, by the end of the season, I was pretty happy with those two picks. I was very excited by what I saw from Chase in that last game against the Western Bulldogs.
The last game is the only one that really, really made me get excited.
He wanted to win.
He was great, and I've seen enough of Ned at sample level, and just the way that he came back in those finals, and he had one absolute screaming game. Was that the one against Norwood?
Yeah, the second game. The first game he was a bit off touch. It wasn't quite there, but it was nearly there.
He had half a year out.
And then that second game against Norwood was sensational.
And that reminded me of the 2 or 3 games that I saw him earlier in the season. One out at Elizabeth, and one at the Parade. And I just saw in those games, for me, I saw enough to be happy. But you're right, Fiend. Both those boys, they need to be big pre-seasons. They need to be fit, and they need to be pushing for best 22 next year. No question about it.
Well, there's likely nowhere to be hiding next year. Based on this profile, they're going to be. And Jordan Galucci's another one, obviously a couple of years prior.
Yep.
And I'm a bit of a Gooch fan, but I want to see him kick on.
Lockie Scholl is the other one that came out of that draft, who I think is brilliant. But all these boys, look, you're absolutely spot on. There's going to be no excuse for these kids. This is their team. If they want it, they can come in and they can step up and they can take ownership. So we'll have to see what they're made of. Do we want to talk about the coach?
Just can I ask, before we do, I'd like to put one question to Fiend, who's an absolute Brad Crouch fan.
Sorry, I forgot about Brad Crouch.
Oh, mate.
Yes. Now, Brad Crouch, Fiend, would you do this trade?
Yes.
Brad.
Outrageous.
Let's have a little bit of meat around it, though. Brad Crouch plus pick 4 to the Gold Coast for pick 1 and pick, say, 15.
Oh, you wouldn't get it for a start, but of course.
No, you might have, but perhaps a little sweetener with a 20 or like that, or even throwing in.
No. Don't be silly. If you're going to do a trade like that, it'd be Crouch and 4 for 1. That's what it would be. Straight up. There's no other sweeteners. It'd be Crouch and 4 for 1.
Would you do it?
I'd do Crouch and 4 for 1. Absolutely.
I would in a heartbeat, because that would give us Rao, who is exactly the type of midfielder this club needs going into the long term.
Yep, absolutely I would. And I'd chuck Matt in there for 2.
Well, Matt in there for Luco.
Yeah, I want Lukosius as part of that.
I think of the big grand trade where you put in both the Crouch boys and Greenwood and pick 4 for picks 1, 2 and Lukosius.
The worry for me on Brad Crouch is more that it looks likely that we're going to give him a pretty solid deal. And that concerns me because I don't think he's earned it. He had a better than average year last year by his standards. He polled well in the Brownlow, but I think he's that type of player. If you have a look at our top 10 and our BNF, we had blokes in the top 10 like David McKay in our BNF this year, and Atkins and Tex. Now, players that shouldn't have been anywhere near in a strong year. So I don't particularly rate Brad's BNF. I rate it in terms of he had a good year, but I think he was best of a bad bunch, and I don't think it puts him anywhere near the top 10 midfielders in the competition. In fact, I think he'd be peripheral top 20 in my view.
He also only just beat Sloan. And we know Sloan had a good year.
Yeah, he had a slow year by his standards. So I'm worried with Brad's manager, and rightly so, from Brad's manager, looking for a Godfather deal. We've cleared a bit of cap space, and, he's now a senior player in the team, etc., etc. But I don't like 5 for 5. I don't even like 5 at $750 a year, really, for Brad, but I think that's probably where it sits. But anything more than that, I really don't want to give Brad any more than 3. And I really don't want to pay him any more than about $750, to be honest.
Well, I'm a much greater fan of Brad than you are, but I would like to trade him and pick 4 for pick 1.
Someone's mic's crackling there. I think it's you, Pete. It won't happen, though. It won't happen. It should happen. Gold Coast should be all over that sort of a trade.
I reckon it's a common sense trade.
Because when we were talking earlier about Gold Coast needing experienced players, well, Brad Crouch is that type of player. He's probably gettable, and they've got the currency to get him. So why wouldn't you entertain it? But I don't think so. I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah, just thought I'd throw it up anyhow.
Would you do the same?
Point,
would you do the same for Matt?
Yeah, I'd do along the lines of what Peter was saying, that for 1 and 2, I'd throw in Brad and Matt at both of them, Adam.
Yeah.
But the players have to agree.
You don't agree?
That's the problem.
Well, I think Brad would go. I think Brad would go for the right deal.
It's a Darwin grunt. What does that mean?
Come on, Don. What do you reckon?
I just think that I've definitely got a lot more faith in the ability of Brad Crouch to be an improving player rather than someone that's hit his ceiling. So I'd take that as a first differential point to you guys. I think that Brad Crouch and his brother are going to be the backbone of our team going forward. And I think their age profile, well, I just think he's going to get better. I think he's going to be in the top 5 he'll be in top 5 in the Brownlow if he has an injury-free preseason.
Well, that doesn't mean Jack. We know that because Nathan Fyfe shouldn't have won the Brownlow this year, for Christ's sakes. So Brad Crouch winning a Brownlow does not mean anything, Donkey.
Okay.
Billy's got no comeback for that.
Okay, all right. So the medal that you get for the best player in the competition, that doesn't mean anything. I actually just don't know how to speak to you then, Phoenix. I think that Brad Crouch is really, really fucking good, and I think he's going to get even fucking better. And I think that trading away for some magic beans, and I mean, not magic beans because, we know the kids are good, but, I just don't think that we need to collapse it all the way down and restart again. I actually think that he's going to get better and he's going to lead us through, and I think we just have to whack in some more talent around him, and I think that taking the picks we've got is what we need to do with.
But he's never had a really good disposal. Even when he was before pre-injuries, he was still had disposal problems, and I think the injuries have exacerbated it. That's not going to improve to the level to get him to a Tim Kellee.
No, Tim Kellee goes at 63% too, Nick.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, but at least he manages to kick it to the forwards' advantage.
Kellee and Brad's stats are virtually identical when you run through it.
And that just shows you that stats are only part of the problem.
I worry that you trade away, one of your better players for a draft pick that goes on a Vic Metro kid who is just as liable to pull stumps in 2 years' time, and that bothers me a lot. And so I just figure if you're going to give away pick 4 and Brad Crouch, then I'd want Lukosius back for it, who's for me, a top quality player who's going to come back to South Australia and give you, 10, 12 years.
Well, then you'd probably do Crouch for Lukosius and a second rounder, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you'd want a bit more than Lukosius for Crouch.
Yeah, whatever.
Crouch
whatever the deal happens to be.
Luke on 15.
Yeah,
something.
I'll do Luke on 15.
I just think that there's a bit of a smell about 1 and 2. There's the whole matey thing and the whole, the best mates thing, and Anderson's already tied to Hawthorn and all this kind of. To me, it's just got a few hairs on it.
Yeah,
and I just don't want to go near it.
But the thing is about that Anderson tied to Hawthorn is that is Hawthorn saying that. Anderson being interviewed is pretty strong at going, no, I just want to play football. Okay. I don't care where. And they were trying to do, wouldn't it be nice if your dad played a couple more games? And he just went, no.
Doesn't care about being tied to the strongest club in the AFL with the best coach in the AFL who are on the up. No. Doesn't care about that.
No, it doesn't. He's been
coached, and because everyone's waiting for him to, slip up and say, I want to get back to Hawthorn, and then he'll be back to Hawthorn as quick as you can blink. And if they're best mates, then they'll go 1-2. That's why we talked about before, the draft pick compensation to Gold Coast for me is useless, because if they pick those 2 kids, they'll be gone in 2 or 3 years. And I don't want to waste, even Brad Crouch with all of his, the foibles that he's got. If he commits to us, we're still going to get 5, 6, 7 years possibly out of him, and another 100 games. And I don't want to sacrifice that asset for something that could be gone in 2. So if I'm going to sacrifice one of our key assets, I want a South Australian kid who's a high quality kid who we can build a team around.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Agree with that, Pete. Just elaborating on Bradley for a moment. And I think this is probably a bit of an issue with Brad, and probably influences my opinion of him. Where's his best spot, Brad Crouch? Is he a pure inside midfielder? Is he an outside midfielder? What is he? In my opinion, he is best working inside. I don't think he's got the leg speed anymore to be an outside mid.
No.
And if you're gonna class him as an inside midfielder, we've got a couple of those already.
Yeah, I think he does a bit of both. I think he does a bit of both.
Well, because he's had to, but his preference is actually to be more inside though, Macca. And so to me, if you're keeping both Crouches and you're going to play them on the ground, you actually don't play them together. You play one in the first half of a quarter and you play the other one as the rotation for him. They're the 2 inside mids, and you rotate the speed around the 2 of them, because he doesn't have that burst of pace anymore, and he freaks out when he actually has to deliver it into the forward line. He doesn't know what to do.
That's why I was talking about the Brad Crouch trade, though, because of the fact that you really got Brad, Matt, and Sloaney, and they're all really genuine inside mids.
See, I disagree about Sloaney. I disagree on Sloaney, because I think we've turned Sloan into an inside mid because we've cashed in on the way he goes about his footy.
His competitiveness.
But I've said for nearly the whole fucking season that I just want to see Rory Sloan on a wing because he will gut run all day. And I'd much rather see, particularly now that his shoulder's a bit crook, and particularly now that he cops a tag, chuck him on a bloody wing. I don't think he's the inside ball that we need.
No, there's nothing about his agility or his vision or anything like that which suggests that he should be an inside midfielder.
No, not at all.
Correct. No, no argument for me. I would just say that's the way he's been being played, though.
He's a get into space, gut running player and he's actually a meters game player.
And let's not forget, it's very true, Pete.
Put him on the wing.
Let's not forget that's how he and Danger worked in tandem. Danger was the go in and get the bloody agate, and Sloaney was the run down the outer side, take 2 bounces, get to the 50 and dong it in.
Yep.
And that's where we will get the best value out of Rory, in my opinion. But going back to Crouchy, if the reason why I don't think he's any more than an inside mid Macca is because you'll never see him run defensively. And
that is a big weakness in his game, yeah.
And I think one of the problems that we've fallen into at Adelaide, and we do it consistently, we do it as fans, and I think the club does it as well, is we romanticise our players. And I don't think at this particular point in time, where the club is at, internally and with its list and all we just can't afford to have rose-coloured glasses on about any player. I think we need to be brutally honest about every player on our list. And I think one of those players is Brad Crouch. We all want him to live up to the hype and live up to the promise, but there's no evidence to suggest that he will. And so we can't have rose-coloured glasses on with regards to Brad. We have to look at him for what he is, and for what he is, he doesn't deserve the contract that he's looking for, in my view.
Well, the interesting thing is we're going to have a new coach, and he's going to look at all the players differently, one would think.
Yep, absolutely. And he's not going to have any input into. Well, and he's not going to have any input into our list this year, is he? So no. he's going to get what he's given, and I expect that what we'll see is I don't think we'll see a lot of movement in the assistant coaching box this year because there are contracts involved and all the rest of it.
Hart's out of contract, though, isn't he?
Hart is, but I don't think Camporelli is, and I don't think the other two are. So I think it might be a bit of a steady as she goes, let's have a look at the list kind of thing, and I think it's next year that we're going to see a lot of the changes.
So who's got the inside running on who's going to be coaching? Has anyone got any word? Any goss?
No idea.
No. I don't think anybody has.
Adam Burns-Nicks, what's his last name?
Uze?
No, it's just one guy. Adam Burns-Nicks.
Clarkson.
Yeah, but Uze's got a job at Hawthorn. Hocking's now the VFL coach for Collins.
Woo, Nicky, woo. That was he signed that job 2 weeks ago, and it was only announced last Friday at their best and fairest. But that was before he applied for the Adelaide coaching job.
Yeah. So they'll just release him if he wins the job, so that's okay.
Yep.
And I think that's what Tom Brown realised eventually.
No thanks on Hocking, please.
Sorry?
No thanks on Hocking, though.
No, but bloody Rashudo. They're saying Rue's very keen on Hocking. I tell you what, Rue should not be allowed to make any bloody appointment. I mean, he put in Burton and bloody House, and
he did get us Walshy, so he's got a few brownie points there. But there's nothing that I've seen of Hocking at any level that makes me think he's a head coach. The famous story about what he did down at Peel Thunder that day.
I was going to say he's got initiative. Put his whole team in the back line.
Yeah, dear Whiskers.
But yeah.
The latest rumours were that Kingsley seems to be firming his favourite, but I mean, this is actually one good thing with the club is that I think most people are just guessing. That there's no real idea who's actually gone for those jobs unless they've said it to the media.
Oh, Nick's is open about it.
There's no leaks coming from the club.
I certainly haven't had any more info other than the info that we got about Jared Schofield being in the mix, inverted commas. So
Yeah.
He hasn't been ruled out, so we've still got that horse running.
I had a little sniff about Adam Uze, but it was tenuous, so it's not, I wouldn't even class it as intel. They're playing their cards very close to their chest. The one that I'm more concerned about, though, is that there doesn't seem to be any chatter whatsoever about who's going to take over from Brett Burton.
Pods Yardley.
Well, I'm wondering whether it's Pods. The chairman did say at the Best and Fairest that over the next fortnight there would be a series of events, and I think that that will, as well as the coaching situation, they said resulting from the review as well as the coaching position. So that indicates that there is going to be something other than some changes other than the coaching position.
I remember that guy saying that he was going to tell us all that what happened about the Tippett thing too, and I'm still waiting for that, Mac. I don't believe a fucking word that Rob Chapman says. Sorry. Don't believe one thing that Chappie says. I don't even think it's worth quoting.
But he had no reason to come out and say at the Best and Fairest and put himself on the line like that, because he normally dodges everything.
Of course he did.
And he put it.
He's got a whole bunch.
Because it makes it sound like they're actually being proactive and they're doing something, and you watch nothing happen.
I like Vardy Magic to comment, Macca's letterbox has been more visible than Birdman in the last 2 weeks, which is a good sign.
Well, that's the only thing that gives me hope, is the fact that he hasn't been around the place. We haven't spotted him in Melbourne today.
Classic VM.
That's given me some semblance of hope that he's going to be shuffled. I don't think he'll be sacked. I think he'll be shuffled, don't you, Pete?
Absolutely, mate. He will be...
it'll be the shuffle,
He will be announced as with beaming pride of Fags. He will be very, very announcing very, very proudly that Brett Burton, after an extensive search, has been announced as the new CEO of the baseball team.
Yeah, operations manager, or driving the relocation project is my guess.
Yeah, that's...
Oh, God, no.
That's actually sensible. That's actually potentially...
He would seek that, no.
Either that, or he could be operations manager of the esports team. That could be something else that Brett might like. But
be the first esports team to do 7 hamstrings playing bloody League of Legends.
But, he won't get the relocation because Fags wants that. That's a glory one.
He will be relocated. And
I'm sure you're
probably
right.
will be.
And I hope he enjoys his future down in Cromania, packing bloody parcels. That's all he's good for.
Well, and okay, so I've said all along I thought this review was a bit of a whitewash, and I'm still of that view. I don't think we're going to get the movement that you seem to think we're going to get, Macca.
I look at it this way, Fiend, is that there is no point having a review. There's no point getting a new coach if you leave that football structure in place as it currently is. And I think even the dumbest Adelaide football supporters can see that there's something particularly wrong. And I was delighted with CEY's comments, just add a little bit of more flame to the whole thing. That we've got Dunstall doing a review, and Dunstall is football-wise, is an intelligent man, and he would have to see that is a very sick football department. And I would expect that our departing coach would have squealed his guts out. Our departing players would have squealed their guts out. And there are a lot of arrows and will be pointed at Brett Burton. And I think you are right that he'll be repositioned in the club. He's got talents that we could use elsewhere.
There's a problem though, Macca, with your statement where you said that even the dumbest Crows supporter should see that there's something wrong. Actually, all you have to do is look at the reaction to what Cam said, where people were responding that he needed to harden up. He needed to be a better player. He needed to suck it up and not be offended, because guess what? Those supporters will back the club and not what a player is saying. So, no, the dumbest Crow supporter is not seeing that there's a problem. They back the boys in. Pike's gone. They will use Pike as the scapegoat, and Pike is too much of a class individual. He might have had some very strong words in private, but he will not do it in public. No,
but the media love Bilton Adelaide, and this is the only way that Adelaide... And look...
Macca, the Adelaide Football Club could not give two shits about the media.
They haven't up until now, but they are scared about that losing patronage. And
bullshit. No, they're not.
No,
they're not.
I think that
they've got 200,000 on a fucking waiting list. They don't care about patronage. What they're going to do is come out and say, we've had a lot of learnings from this review, and the people involved have grown as individuals, and they've taken on lessons, and we're going to do things differently, and we're going to rely on those people that are in those positions to have taken all the advice on board that was given to us by Jason Dunstall, and we're going to do we're going to do a better job. We're going to work harder, and we're going to do a better job because we'll have learnt from this process. That's what's going to happen. And Jason Dunstall will kick walls on the way out, but at the end of the day, he's only making recommendations. It's up to the club to implement those recommendations, and I think they will go about it in a very soft manner. And I think you might find one or two cursory personnel shifts, but overall nothing's going to change because it went very quickly, Macca, very quickly, from a top to bottom review to a football department review. That happened within the first week, remember? The rhetoric changed from a top to bottom review to a football department review. Correct. It already got softened after 1 week. They already removed 25% of the club from the review. You can bet your fucking life that Rashudo, Burton, Fagan, those blokes are going to be fighting tooth and nail to hold their positions.
Burton can't hold his position because of the...
You keep saying that, but there's nothing. There's no basis on it.
Yes, there is. There's
a basis in Macca's mind.
Yeah, every coaching position that is appointed, the football manager who he reports to is always on that committee because he is part of appointing his own man. And if I went back and looked at every coach that has been appointed by Adelaide over the last 18 years, football manager is part of it because he reports to him. I went and had a look at all the recent coaching appointments by other clubs. The football manager is part of it. Burton is not part of it.
How do you know that?
Because Fagan said it quite clearly on the radio. He's not part of it. And when asked because Rowie put him through the griller on that particular point, and he said that we've got him doing other things back at the club. He
also said that he would have input.
No,
he did say that, Macca. He did
not into the actual appointment.
He did say that. He said he would have input. And I wouldn't mind betting that he's not in the interviews, but he's certainly getting the results passed across his desk.
You can't appoint something as serious a position as a coach and then expect him to report to somebody else who has never been involved in his appointment.
Macca, have you met the Adelaide Football Club?
Exactly. Now, you keep applying logic to this, and I respect your logic because it's spot on. But the Adelaide Football Club have proven over the last 7 to 10 years that they will do what serves the individuals in that club more than anything else. They do not do what is logical. And I'll give you a case in point. They kicked out a perfectly decent head of fitness, whatever his title was, Nick Poulos, and they got a bloke in from a failed system and his offsider to run our fitness program, who then destroyed our fitness base, and so they promoted him to general manager football. Now, if you can tell me where the shred of logic in that course of events is, then I'll go along with what you're saying about the process now. But there is none.
That is pre the review. But at the moment, they've got the
review's not going to make any difference.
Let me finish. At the moment, they've got the spotlight on them, and they've also Burton is not part of the process of appointing the coach.
You don't think the spotlight was on them when Tippergate happened? And not only did Chapman survive, all the board members survived, and Stephen Trigg survived. Everyone involved. Everyone involved in that, except Justin Reid, who had already gone, survived. Now,
not Justin.
No, John. That's what I said. Sorry, John Reid, not Justin Reid.
Yeah, but
he'd already gone anyway. He'd already gone anyway.
Yeah, he was already.
So everyone survived from that Macca. So and there was certainly scrutiny.
Burton won't keep his position. That's what I'm saying. He won't keep it. I think you're right that he'll get transferred somewhere else, but he won't hold that position.
Hey, what about for Campo though? Now, tell me, does Campo is he still involved in his own building company?
Not as much as he was.
See, I was thinking that building at North Adelaide, that the new club headquarters at North Adelaide,
Camporelli Constructions.
I reckon Camporelli Constructions might have just won the contract for that.
It might be Richard Douglas.
He might be getting the cousins back together, all the subbies back together, and saying, "Boys, it's back on. There's another contract."
Yeah, who knows?
Yep. And talk about Campo. So far he's out-survived 4 coaches. I mean, you cannot keep that bloke on either.
Oh, but Macca, there you go again. You're mixing logic with wishful thinking. History shows you by what you said that he has survived 4 coaches. So why wouldn't he survive another?
Well, he can't survive 90 bloody coaches. You've got to come to it in somewhere.
Why not?
I think if anybody's able to do it, it's probably Campo.
Probably Campo, yep.
Well,
and Vardy Magic has confirmed that he is out of Clem and Camporelli, which I think he divested last year.
Yeah, last year, because he went back full time because they gave him the senior assistant.
Coaching. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sure. And the other thing too is Brad Crouch did say in when he was after his best and fairest when he's being interviewed about the fact that he's looking forward to next year with new coaches. With
so
coaches,
new head coach and a replacement for Benny Hart. Macca, you're going to bed at night and you're having these sweet little dreams about an Adelaide Football Club with no Brett Burton and no Scott Camporelli, and everything that you've said on the podcast, and everything that you've said on the podcast tonight makes absolute sense, and yet there is not one shred of evidence and not one shred of historical precedence to suggest that that's what's going to happen. So you lie your head on your pillow next to Mrs. Macca when she gives you a cup of chamomile and tries to calm you down after the podcast.
Always scratches me back before I go to bed.
And she sings you a little lullaby.
Can you edit that out? Or put explicit, please?
I don't reckon it's Mrs. Macca. I reckon she's got a stand-in to do that. Who'd want that job? Bloody hell. Anyway,
horrible.
Mac, I hope you're right, but I'm highly sceptical, as you could probably tell.
Okay, back on the coach is where we started. Are you happy though with the names that have been nominated?
I've got no frame of reference, mate. There's doubts about Scotty Burns just because he's been in the system for so long and hasn't been picked up before. Got a bit of Peter Sumich and Lee Tudor and that sort of thing about him.
Yeah, it's got that little bit of a smell about him. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Well, he's been spoken of very highly, but he always misses out on those jobs. But he's been in some very very good systems.
Yeah.
So I think that's why a lot of people are keen.
Well, he has been in good system, but why doesn't anybody ever appoint him?
Yeah, so and then you got Uze, who's obviously part of the Hawthorn system as well, and probably why everyone's excited about Adam is because he's part of that system, and that's fair enough, but I have no idea what sort of coach he is. Jared Schofield... Sorry?
Yeah. I was going to say Uze's supposed to be very good with his relations with players.
Right. Schofield has got a good background, but not dissimilar to Marty Matner. At this stage, the left field one to me still seems to be Mark Stone, to be honest with you. He's the one that is probably more credentialed than anyone else on the list, despite the fact that he's not currently in the AFL system.
But won't get it, though.
Wow.
We don't know. We just don't know.
You don't
Well-
know.
Yeah, you just don't know.
Well, the media keep throwing up names, but they haven't even gone near his. But so I'm thinking that Nix is a very likely one. Uzo's a very likely one.
Nix has never been in a successful system, though. That's the knock on him.
That's my one fear with Nix. You're quite right. Uzo has definitely he's had 8 years, I think it is, under Clarko, and to the point where he was being appointed to this year to be Clarko's strategist, which in my opinion rates him pretty highly.
Well, you reckon Clarko delegates?
No, not really.
I think he does a bit because that's what Fagan was doing. Fagan was that role.
Yeah, true.
with
That's very
Clarkson.
true. That's very true.
And he will not put somebody in that role he doesn't trust.
Yeah, so I think that is a high recommendation for Uzo, to be honest. And the fact that he's been with a successful club, as you said, Fiend, that's my one doubt about Nix. I think Nix has got a good CV, but other than the fact that he hasn't been, a lot of it was spent with Port, and then he's been with Sydney. And while they go all right, they're not ones that have been at the top. But he's only one component of it. I agree. So I suppose, look, I'm sure though. I think there's reasonable enough quality to expect that we should get somebody reasonable.
Well, that's inspiring.
Well, I can't say more than that because I don't even know who it is.
No, and that's not having a go at you, Mac, but I think that's probably about right. I think you're right. I think there's reasonable enough evidence out there to say we'll get someone reasonable. We're not getting, as Fiend said at the start, we've got no frame of reference. We're not getting an established coach that's a 3-time premiership.
No, we're not
premiership winning coach. So we just got to suck up the fact that we're in a little zone at the moment where the only real coaches that seem to be on the market are some of the senior assistants kicking around, and we'll just have to see, I guess, whoever presents best and whoever interviews the best and whoever's got the best vision for the club and can communicate that best to the panel will likely get the job, I guess.
I think for me, the main thing of what we need as a club is somebody who's going to gel that group back together.
Absolutely.
So they need to be able to communicate and create. And what I think one of the things I said was to bring the fun back into football for our players.
Pikey tried that last season.
Yeah, that
bullshit,
was the theme.
Yeah, he did, and it did. No, I think he tried it this year, and it didn't quite work.
Yeah, they'll
Sort of
peach
did a
and
little bit,
beers.
then it didn't. But I think it's gelling the group back together to get them united and working together is what I'm hoping the coaching panel is looking for.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why they cannot have the structure above it, which otherwise it won't happen.
Oh, Mac.
No, look, I'm stating the obvious. I understand that, and you reckon that I'm dreaming, and I may well be dreaming, but God, don't ruin my dreams yet. The other one I keep dreaming of, which is, and Nikki did fleetingly mention it, is Podsy Udley. The fact that he was on that committee, or is on that committee, which is appointing the coach, and could easily be seen to be as he may well be the candidate to replace Burton.
Well, I have to say, I hope that happens, Macca, but one of the reasons I'm not inspired by the, who we've got at the moment is I just feel that, walking into the Adelaide Football Club, it's just a myriad of darkness and secret handshakes and secret tunnels and things, everywhere, and it's just a whole kind of an established network of boys club, and to me, what you wanted was a coach, someone almost like a Ross Lyon or someone like that was going to go in there and completely break that open and just dig out, fill in the tunnels and stop the handshakes and stop the, find out who's got the photographs and all that kind of stuff, and take whatever those photographs that D-Max got, to take them away from once and for all. But guys like Nix and Uze and these guys, they'll just be absorbed into the great sort of mass of old school tie, old club tie, old boy network thing they got going on down there.
That is the impression you do get from the outside. No, there's no doubt about that. Yep.
Look, we are a top 5 club in the AFL in terms of our financial strength. There's no reason that we shouldn't be able to prize a top 5 coach out of the competition. And the fact that we're sitting around here, and no disrespect to any of the candidates, but the fact that we're swimming around in a sea of senior assistants is just indicative of a lack of motivation to assemble the best football department in the country, which obviously includes a coach.
But in fairness, though, Fiend, 90% of coaches come from assistant coaches.
Well, they all do. But is that what you want when you're rebuilding?
Well, there's not that many senior coaches actually move. I mean, Ross Lyon did, but I can't think of too many others that go waltzing around.
That move to a club that's rebuilding. They tend to start with a coach to rebuild with them.
It's a gamble. It's a gamble, in my opinion. And
I think every time you appoint a coach, it's a gamble.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess you want to try and minimise the risk and spend some money. And God, if we get any of those candidates in, Scott Burns, Adam Uze, whoever, if we get any of those candidates in and retain our coach's box from last season, we will be the most inexperienced coach's box in world sport.
Oh, I totally agree.
So
that's why
there's a massive danger, and I think that's why Scott Camporelli stays on.
Well,
because he's the only experienced one in there, Mac.
But you could replace him.
Oh, but then it's just another risk, isn't it? The Crows will say, well, Scott Camporelli is a known quantity, he knows the players, blah, 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 he knows the club, he's a good conduit between the club and the new coach, rah, 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 rah. I can hear Chapman squealing that out now.
Sadly, I can hear it too.
Do you know, he used to be my boss. I wish I could talk about him to his face back then like I am now.
Is it what Chapman was?
Yeah. Bloody wanker.
So shall we end on a positive note with congratulations to Brad Crouch for being club champion, but also congratulations to Patrick Wilson for the SANFL award. And if anybody hasn't seen his speech at the BNF, I do go ahead and listen to it. He kept saying that Righty should have won it, not him. But he also spoke about how much all the players who are there and welcomed him into the system, but also those that are leaving, and also spoke about how much Pike meant to him. And I love the fact that he forgot that Ben Hart was a coach. But yeah, that's a great little speech to listen to.
And Kyle Hardigan, best team man, congratulations to him. And Tom Duday got the Community Service Award too. So a couple of really good awards there for some of those players.
Well, I think the best award has to go to David McKay, because how the fuck did he get another 1 year? Like he did that. That is award worthy. Among
all I can say, they're very, very telling graphic photos with that coat. That's all I can say.
It can't be a coach. I don't know who it is, but anyway. Yeah. Anyway, it's week 1 of trade week, which is always dull, but I think we've caught up on everything since the Tigers won 2 out of 3. Why aren't we going for someone in
the grand final? Oh my God!
Why aren't we going for anyone in the Richmond coaching box? By the way,
they were talking about. Well, they were talking about.
Kingsley. Yeah, that's true.
Who?
Kingsley.
Oh yeah, Kingsley. Yeah, but
10
also,
folks, I'm going to bail.
Yeah,
all right, mate.
Me too.
Fair one.
Catch you later.
Yeah. So but also the coach of Richmond B grade, the VFL team, he was being talked about as a possible candidate to be the wise man sitting alongside our new coach, because apparently he's a pretty good tactician and strategist.
Well, at least they already know the Richmond theme song from the camp, so they'll be able to sing it. Anyway, look, it's starting to get silly now, so now that the voice of reason... Oh, McRae, that's right. And I don't know whether he's still in the running or not, but he's got some good raps as well, Craig McRae. Anyway, look, we probably should wrap it up. As I said, week 1 of trade week is always a little bit slow, but we had a couple of weeks to catch up on, so I think we've done that. I don't think we've left anything behind.
I'm just giggling at the fact that, you know, it's been a slow week. There's nothing much to talk about, and we've talked about it for an hour and a half.
Yeah, I know.
What about next week when there's something to talk about?
Oh, well,
there won't be something to talk about next week.
Let's hope there's something to talk about.
When does trade week actually end?
End of next week. And
Is
apparently,
it the end of next week?
Yeah, and according to Rashudo, we should have a coach by then too, so next week should be a blockbuster. Look, thanks very much again to Ryan at Smith Partners Real Estate. They've been a massive support for the CrowCast throughout the year, and we thank them very, very much, along with the boys at Down to Earth Electrical for all your electrical data and air conditioning needs. We send a big thank you out to Scorpus at Hardware Unboxed. If you've got tech reviews on your mind, go and visit his YouTube channel, Hardware Unboxed. And last but not least, of course, we thank everyone who supports us on Patreon. If you want to support us there, get along to patreon.com/AFL Crowcast. Macca, Nikki, I think Donkey's bailed as well. How's he, or is he still there, Donk? Thanks for your input tonight, mate. It's been a bit of a crowded room.
Daylight savings confuses him.
No, not at all, Nikki. That's quite rude, actually. Very smart. But it's just
you guys don't have it.
Would you like to talk us out, Donkey?
Yeah, look, I just want to say to... are you going to fade me out softly? Like, I just talk sweet nothings to everybody?
Keep going.
All right, look, it's been a really long and sluggish off season. We've been at the club's throat since the last week of July, and we are still not at the end of our review. We don't have our coach, and I think there's 165 days until the start of the next season. So it's been a yucky slog, and I'm bored and over it, and I just want to see what we're doing next. And I think that's the most frustrating thing about this. It seems to be that no one's got any idea.
And on that note, thanks everyone who joined us on Spreaker. Thanks to all those on Facebook and YouTube as well. We'll be back next Tuesday for Tuesday Night Live. Thank you, Macca, for joining us.
Enjoyed it as always.
Very robust as usual. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Veen, for coming back from Queensland.
Well, yeah, it was a struggle, but I got there. Donkey, thanks very much, mate. And we'll see everybody next week, Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Central.
And Donkey.
Yes,
Macca, we're winding up, mate. See you later.
You're going to say goodnight to him.
Bye.
Oh.